Let's take a closer look at the protests over the planned judicial reforms. Amir Tibon is a diplomatic correspondent for the Israeli newspaper Haaretz. He joins us live now from Tel Aviv. So obviously this bill is essentially part of a package of reforms aimed at scaling back the power of the judiciary in Israel. Amir, when you think about just the resistance, right, and the level of protests we've seen for months now in Israel, what's going to happen when this bill actually becomes law? If this is a reaction we're seeing right now, what's going to happen then?
So the noise that you just heard behind your correspondent at the airport in Israel will get 10 times louder, and the amount of people in the street will grow significantly. And I think also the international pushback will be much more significant than what we've seen so far. What we're seeing today in Israel, massive protests all over the country, roads blocked in different cities, the police arresting dozens of people, people getting injured. That is all because one component of this judicial overhaul package, one bill, has passed a first reading in our Knesset, in the Israeli parliament. It's still got a way to go. And I think for the protest movement, it is a warning sign. They're basically trying to tell the government, what we're doing today, this day of rage, is just the beginning. Don't go there. Don't tear apart Israeli society. And there is an alternative, which is to renew the negotiations that had collapsed at the president's residence, meaning Israeli President Isaac Herzog, who wants to be some kind of a mediator here. I will not be shocked if in a week or two, there will be more and more talk in the Israeli political system about going back there.
So speaking of going back, I mean, the last time, I don't know if you remember, but the last time I actually had you on my show was, I think it was late March, and there were sweeping protests. You remember? Yeah. So there were sweeping protests across the country.
It will be a day never forgotten, Zain, because it was the day of the huge demonstrations after Netanyahu tried to fire the defense minister.
Right.
So everything that happened on that day, every Israeli journalist will remember for many years, and I remember when I was on your show.
I was texting you, and you were like, "Listen, it's a huge day here. I'll get back to you in a second." No, but that was the point, as you mentioned, where he had just sort of fired Gallant. He had just fired the defense minister, and obviously he reinstated him. But it was a huge day of protests. Then, because Netanyahu was under so much political pressure, he paused the reforms temporarily for a few weeks, a few months. Just explain to our audience how we got from that to where we are now. Explain the political calculation for Netanyahu in all of this.
So I think what Netanyahu did is he tried at first to ram through this reform using the fact that the Israeli opposition was divided after their loss in the previous election, using the fact that the world is busy with other issues, Ukraine and China and so many other points of crisis, and also building on the momentum that he himself had coming back into the prime ministership and surprising all the skeptics. And he said this is an opportunity to just push everything at once. And he did not take into consideration the huge pushback, the strong resistance that his government would meet in the streets of every Israeli city, hundreds of thousands of people protesting, people within the military, in the Air Force, in the special units, in the intelligence saying, we will quit, we will no longer serve if this becomes the law of the land, and of course also the international reaction. And then he said, okay, let's stop and let's try to do it instead gradually, piece by piece. We call it here in Israel the salami method, like you cut you slice a salami into pieces. So now they're trying to push through one piece of it, which is basically taking away the Supreme Court's ability to conduct judicial review over governmental decisions. This is not about legislation right now. This is about what we call the reasonableness standard, the ability of the Supreme Court in Israel to come and say that a decision made by a minister in the government, an appointment perhaps, is extremely unreasonable. I want to give you one example, Zain. Netanyahu is a criminal defendant right now facing his own corruption trial in the Jerusalem District Court. Of course, he's innocent in the Israeli system until proven otherwise, or if he retains his innocence. But theoretically, he could try to fire the Israeli Attorney General who is leading the case against him. Today, it's very likely that if his government fires the Attorney General at the same time that he has a clear interest there, the Supreme Court will say, no, this is an extremely unreasonable decision, and it will strike it down. If you cancel the reasonableness standard, new options open up.
So what does all this mean for Israel's relationship with its allies on the international stage? I mean, particularly in the US, there's so much concern around the world, just given this bill, about the state of Israel's democratic health? I mean, obviously opponents think that Israel is slipping towards dictatorship. President Biden is actually, I believe, hosting the president of Israel, not the prime minister this time around. Yes. He's not hosting Netanyahu. So what does this mean for Israel's relationship with its allies?
So today, the legal system in Israel, whether it is the legal advisors to the ministries of the government, and of course the Supreme Court, in a way, it plays a bit the role of a babysitter in Israeli politics. A lot of crazy decisions and ideas that Netanyahu's far-right partners or very ultra-religious partners want to pass stop at the Supreme Court. And for Netanyahu, it's been convenient. I mean, for most of his career, he was opposed to curtailing the powers of the Supreme Court. That changed only due to his personal circumstances. But if the Supreme Court and the legal advisors will be weakened, as the government wants to do through all these different pieces of legislation, someone else will have to play the babysitter role. And of course, most likely it will have to be the United States. Every crazy idea, every unthinkable and unreasonable piece of legislation or policy will get to the desk of the American ambassador or the American president, and the same goes for the leaders, of course, of other close allies of Israel, France, Germany, the UK. So there definitely is a stake here for Israel's allies abroad to come and say, wait a second, you are changing the structure of your government in a way that could also later on cause international trouble. And just one more sentence about this. For every aspect, for every element of Netanyahu's ruling coalition, there's a different interest behind this judicial overhaul. Netanyahu has his personal issues with the trial. The ultra-Orthodox, very religious parties in his coalition want to make Israel a more religious country, and they view the Supreme Court as a liberalizing force in Israeli society. But there's also a far-right component in the Netanyahu coalition. People like the Finance Minister Smotrich and National Security Minister Ben Gvir. For them, weakening the judicial system is all about the settlements, it's all about annexation, and it's all about passing laws and policies that would severely hurt the rights of Palestinians and not having the Israeli Supreme Court stand in their way.
Amir Tibon, thank you so much. As you're speaking, we were just looking at live pictures of Jerusalem where protesters, I think it's about 7:30 at night, there in Jerusalem, with protesters gathered in the streets, waving Israeli flags, honking horns, vuvuzelas as well. Actually, the noise was so loud with one of our correspondents, Hadas Gold, outside the Ben Gurion airport. It was almost impossible to hear her, but people are very upset, very angry about what this means, what this judicial overhaul, what this bill means for the state of democracy in Israel. A lot of people concerned that perhaps Israel is sliding towards a dictatorship. Amir Tibon, always good to have you on the show. I hope we can have you back in the near future.
Thank you very much.
Amir, thank you so much.